One of the bravest and best things that you can do to overcome OCD is to actually go and knock on its door. Instead of waiting for it to come to you, the best thing we can do is to actually try to find a way to allow the fear and the anxiety to be there. And of course, what I'm talking about here is doing exposure activities. Now, back when I was really struggling, I found it very, very difficult to motivate myself to go and do those difficult things. And I think this is a familiar thing for most people with OCD. Of course, we might know that we need to do exposure, but actually doing it is something else altogether. For me, this is an analogy that I really like to share with my clients about how you can actually, approach doing exposure in a positive and healthy way. And I think, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that, we're not doing exposure, just for the sake of it. We're doing it because when we do exposure, it does allow us to start to realize that we can feel difficult emotions. We can allow anxiety to be there in the body. And actually, it's an empowering thing. So if you can keep that in mind as we kind of think about this analogy, when we're really struggling with OCD, what we tend to do, if you imagine that you have a very noisy and rude and annoying neighbor. Well, that's OCD, and that neighbor, it really, really hates it when you make noise in your house. In fact, it doesn't want you to kind of make any noise at all. And so, what we tend to do is we tend to kind of walk around on tiptoes in our house. And that's a real shame because obviously it's our house. We don't want to walk around on tiptoes, afraid to make any noise at all, because that's not a nice way to live. But this is what OCD tends to do to us. It makes us feel afraid in our own homes that we can't make any noise. We can't do anything out of the ordinary because if we do, OCD is going to show up and it's going to ruin everything for us. And we don't want that to happen. And if you're struggling with doing exposure, I do offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. So what do we do about this very difficult situation that we find ourselves? Because if we don't take action, what tends to happen is that this situation will just continue. Not only this, but sometimes OCD might even start coming round to your house and knocking on your door, because you've made a very, very small noise or something. And, it might start saying to you, hey, I'm here. Don't you make that noise again. I'm OCD. How dare you make that kind of noise? If you do that again, I'll be round here all the time. And of course, when that happens, we feel more and more fearful of the OCD. It keeps on coming round to your door, knocking on the door, shouting at you, telling you, how dare you make noise? And again, it's a very difficult place to find yourself. So how do we stand up to this? Well, that's really, doing exposure. And exposure is kind of like this. Rather than kind of being at home and kind of, trying not to make any noise, trying your best, to be quiet so that OCD doesn't come and knock on your door. The important thing that we need to learn to do is actually, to make as much noise as we want because it's our house, and to stop allowing OCD to kind of dictate to us how we should live our lives. And then number two, we need to actually be able to kind of find the strength and the resolve to go and knock on OCD's door. Rather than waiting for it to come to us all the time, we actually go and knock on its door. And when it opens the door, it will be surprised, maybe for the first time. What's going on here? The kind of roles have reversed. You've gone to its door. You've banged on its door. You've demanded, that it see you. And you're kind of telling it, hey, I'm here. I want to see you. I want to experience the emotion that you can give me. I'm not going to hide from you. I want to see what this fear is all about. And this completely turns things on its head. When we can do this, really, this is what exposure is all about. It's about kind of allowing ourselves to feel those difficult emotions, to look the OCD in the eye, and to begin to see that this annoying, noisy neighbor, or this kind of policeman in our own head is actually, not something that we need to be so afraid of. It's just this thing, this kind of habit that we've picked up over the years, and we feel that we need to listen to this rude neighbor, that we have to pay attention to them, but we don't. And when we kind of show up and we prove to it that we don't need to do that anymore, well, over time, as you continue to practice that, you start feeling more and more confident in your ability to not listen to that neighbor so much. And in fact, to kind of get in its face and to really do the things that you want to do, despite the fact that you may be getting some fear and anxiety about that. Now, when we're practicing exposure, I think it should be done in a kind of gentle and responsible way. It's not about throwing yourself into the deep end and doing the hardest things, right from the get-go. I think it's much better if you can kind of gently start leaning into it by choosing one or two things that are perhaps a little bit difficult for you and choosing to do those things, going to knock on the door of the OCD, and proving to yourself that you can do it. If we start small and kind of work up in that way, then that kind of noisy, rude neighbor doesn't seem so threatening when we do go and knock on its door. Anyway, I really hope that you found that helpful. Please remember, I do offer a free discovery call. To get that, you can head over to my website, which is robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.